I can still recall the tone of her words when she uttered them. Steady, nearly practiced. "Ethan, I've agreed to marry another person." For an instant, I figured she was pulling my leg. The manner in which she lingered in the entrance, clutching her device as if preparing to capture my response, turned it into some bizarre psychological test. But then she grinned, tiny, courteous, anxious, and I understood she meant it seriously. It was the sort of hush that doesn't merely occupy a space. It slips into your torso, settles in, and lingers until you utter something foolish. So I refrained. I simply dipped my head once and replied, "Excellent. You can relocate with him." She fluttered her eyelids as though that reply caught her off guard. I could practically witness her prepared lines crumbling. She had braced for me to dispute, plead, perhaps even weep. She hadn't prepared for apathy. For several moments she remained there immobile. Then, barely audible, she murmured, "Ethan, don't act that way, don't act that way." Those were her exact words. After admitting she'd become betrothed to another while continuing to reside in my home, I stepped around her, grabbed my keychain, and stated, "You'll have until the end of the weekend to gather your belongings." That concluded it. No yelling, no commotion, just subdued concluding remarks. But the calm didn't endure. By late Sunday, she hadn't departed yet. There were cartons partially filled, her garments still hanging in the wardrobe, and her band. Not the betrothal one, but the one I'd presented to her 2 years prior, placed on the surface like a cruel prank. I questioned her once more, composed as always. "What keeps you here?" She exhaled deeply, settled onto the sofa, and explained, "I can't join him just yet." I chuckled, unable to stop myself. "You can't, you've committed to the man, haven't you?" She averted her gaze. "It's complex." That's when it dawned on me she felt no remorse. She wasn't bewildered. She was merely trapped between two cozy situations. One guy she craved for excitement. One guy she craved for security, and I'd served as the security for far too extended a period. I uttered not another syllable. I simply began assembling her items personally. Silent, methodical, every pullover, every mounted picture, every set of footwear she'd abandoned beneath the mattress. When she noticed my actions, she erupted. "Ethan, halt. You can't simply evict me." I continued creasing garments. "You selected your path. I'm merely granting you the liberty to embrace it." Her tone wavered. "You fail to comprehend. It's not that straightforward." I glanced up at her. "It's precisely that straightforward." For the initial occasion in ages, I detected alarm in her expression. Not the artificial droplets she employed to triumph in disputes, but genuine dread, the variety that emerges when a person grasps they're no longer directing events. She lowered herself quietly. I persisted in assembling. By the point I completed, it was beyond midnight. The area appeared tidier than it had in many moons, as if it had at last released a breath. She uttered softly, "You're truly finished with me, aren't you?" I offered no reply. I had no requirement to. The following dawn, she remained present, positioned at the dining surface, fixating on her device. Brew untouched, gaze inflamed, but no droplets. I filled my own mug and inquired, "Do you require assistance transporting your items to his residence?" She recoiled. "He isn't aware yet." I paused mid-gulp. "Isn't aware of what, that you're still dwelling with me or that you accepted his proposal?" Her quietude served as the response. That's when the full reality struck me. There existed no betrothal, not truly. She'd fabricated it to probe me, to wound me, to determine if I still valued enough to battle for her. She desired theatrics, sentiment, turmoil, something she could manipulate. But in its place she received tranquility. And tranquility to her seemed like dismissal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't inquire why. I simply declared, "You may remain until tomorrow, then we're through permanently." That evening she entered my chamber, not weeping, not furious, just subdued. She perched on the bed's border and murmured, "You didn't even inquire who it was." I gazed at the overhead surface. "Does it signify?" She paused. Perhaps she believed I'd rotate, grasp her palm, and request she remain. But I refrained. She stated gently, "It was a colleague from the office." I responded, "Then I wish your workplace affair provides superior benefits." She chuckled, not due to amusement, but because she lacked alternatives. The chuckling shifted back to quietude. The variety of quietude that signals finality. But it wasn't the conclusion, not immediately. Because the subsequent dawn, she performed something I never anticipated. When I descended the stairs that morning, she was preparing the first meal, cinnamon bread, the type she once created when our connection still flourished. The aroma struck me initially, then the flashback. For a brief moment it nearly resembled the past era, the weekend tunes playing, her softly singing to herself. But upon closer inspection, I noticed her fingers shaking. She placed a dish before me as if nothing occurred. "Consume a bit," she said gently. "You haven't dined since yesterday." I didn't take a seat. Instead, I rested against the surface and questioned, "What prompts this behavior?" Her tone wavered. "Because I erred." I released an exhale I hadn't known I'd retained. "Which aspect? Accepting the proposal or fabricating it?" She grimaced. "Both." I remained silent. I simply observed her, truly examined her for the initial instance. I could discern the weariness on her countenance, the remorse concealed by cosmetics. She murmured, "I believed if I claimed betrothal, it would prompt you to strive for me. I believed perhaps you'd value again." I moved my head gradually. "So you deceived to demonstrate your value to yourself or to me?" She provided no response. She simply gazed downward at her palms. I approached, retrieved my keychain, and declared, "You shouldn't attempt to challenge affection. It either persists or it fades." As I pivoted to exit, she uttered something that halted me abruptly. "I never intended to depart, Ethan. I just desired to feel desired once more. That's the nature of coercion. It always conceals itself within sorrow." I rotated back. "You were desired. You were cherished. You simply failed to observe when it ceased being suitable for you." Her gaze moistened, but I'd ceased pitying. It wasn't fury any longer, just void. I exited the residence and motored until I located a serene vantage near the water. I remained there for hours reviewing all, the joy, the separation, the instant she voiced those terms. "I've agreed to marry another." It wasn't merely disloyalty, it was acting. She sought to direct the conclusion to force me to pursue her once more, but instead she bestowed me my independence. When I came back that night, the majority of her possessions had vanished. The seating area appeared empty. Only a handful of cartons lingered, one containing her former hoodie, one with an image of us at a ceremony we both feigned enjoyment. There was a message on the surface. It read, "I didn't intend to forfeit you. I was simply afraid you'd already abandoned me within your soul." She was accurate. I creased the message once, placed it in the compartment, and never retrieved it again. For the initial several weeks, the hush seemed harsh. Every noise in the dwelling resounded excessively. The heating device, the squeak of the planks, the cooler buzzing in the shadows, but then the quiet began to seem serene, balanced even. One evening, many moons later, I received a text from an unfamiliar contact. It was her. Just 2 terms, "I'm regretful." I fixated on it for an extended period. My digit lingered above the display. Then I secured the device and placed its screen downward. Sometimes resolution isn't dialogue. It's quietude that ultimately ceases requiring explanations. Folks believe affection concludes in vocal battles and droplets, but most often it concludes subtly, like the noise of an entrance shutting gently after you. Weeks evolved into months. I disposed of the residence, shifted to a compact unit in the city center, recommenced. No theatrics, no online declarations, just serenity. And occasionally I still reflect on that dawn, her positioned in the entrance declaring her betrothal. I recall the expression in her gaze when she grasped I wouldn't implore. That's when it registered. She never sought union. She sought dominance disguised as affection. And I sought serenity disguised as devotion. Now I awaken in a subdued chamber, light filtering through partially drawn shades, and I prepare my own cinnamon bread. Same method, altered significance. Because the reality is, serenity isn't what you discover when someone selects you, is what you construct after they